Greetings and welcome to the 72nd episode of Rant. It is time to go back to the wonderful world of the Commodore 64 and review a recent game, Hired Sword 2, released in 2020 by Double-Sided Games exclusively for the Breadbin, while an Atari ST port is also in the works. Hired Sword 2 is a role-playing game in which you have to do the usual cheerful killing of monsters to gain experience, level up, and gather precious loot while exploring dimly lit dungeons to complete various quests. What is not usual about Hired Sword 2 is that it is an adult-oriented game, and maybe the best way to describe it would be the baby of the unholy union between Leisure Suit Larry and Ultima. The original Hired Sword, which is also included in the game, is a short and generic adventure about a hero that rid the kingdom of a demon. The sequel starts off taking no prisoners. From the very beginning, the hero is portrayed as a handsome yet lecherous rogue. You just had a wet dream that has you frolicking with a beautiful elf, only to wake up hungover and find yourself making out with a cat, naked and inside a trash heap. You are convinced that the elf was real, so you set off to find her. Now, if these kinds of misadventures don't activate your Leisure Suit Larry sensors, nothing will. The graphics of the game are no great shakes, but I guess this is to be expected, since this is a tribute to the early Ultima games. The various sprites are made with humor while trying to retain the old-school Ultima aesthetics. Also, when you reach certain points in the game, certain still pictures of ladies displaying their assets are unlocked, which are quite competently and lovingly drawn. The audio of the game is quite likable, with a tongue-in-cheek take on the Greensleeves theme for the main game and various other tunes during battle, dungeons, and so on. These tunes can become a bit grating after the first few hours of listening to them non-stop. Some generic sound effects are also present. The controls of the game are quite simple and intuitive for an RPG, using a very uncomplicated joystick input, and this makes Hired Sword 2 a pick-up-and-play game. You do everything with the fire button, for example searching, resting, traveling, or opening your inventory, depending on your location. Initiating combat is a matter of simply walking on a monster. The actual battle is a bit more complicated, but as suggested in the manual, you can also just spam the fire button until you emerge victorious or dead as a doorknob. Fleeing doesn't work very well since you lose an item if you do, and when a monster flees, if you catch up with them, they have recovered their full health. Moving around in the game world is reasonably fluid, with the exception of the lovable NPCs cheerfully blocking your way, so you have to spend an eternity moving back and forth until they decide to clear off. The thing I disliked most with the controls of Hired Sword 2 is the inventory management, where you have some very limited slots and you get spammed with useless items all the time, so a lot of the game time is actually spent dealing with the items that you carry. Quest items also take up precious inventory space, So you had better do some exciting inventory cleaning before every thrilling game moment, so way to go. And the gameplay is actually very fun and addictive. The simple controls and mechanics help a lot, and the story is quite linear, in a good way, so you don't feel overwhelmed with a huge world and no direction on what to do next, which plagues lots of classic RPGs. Grinding is present, of course this being an RPG and all, but it is thankfully kept to a minimum, and this is partly because of the character progression mechanics. You see, apart from the usual experience and leveling up rules, character improvement is mainly dependent on finding and choosing the correct items, which have a level of their own and can boost your attributes. I am quite a fan of that, since you can create the hero you want and focus on the attributes you think as the more important. The game difficulty never rises above average, but some of the fights can get quite tough at times. There are also instances of death because of a wrong choice, so recalling the old Sierra Online motto, save early, save often. The game is quite long, so don't expect to complete it in a couple of hours. But it never gets boring or repetitive because there is no end to the shenanigans of our humanizer hero, and every quest have lots of silly humor that makes this game an instant win for me. The game also doesn't let you visit all the locations until you have reached certain parts of the story, and I am a huge fan of that, since I am allergic to backtracking. Unfortunately, since the game is pretty linear, there is little replayability value, although I would love to revisit it through the Atari ST port when it gets a release. Overall, Hired Soul 2 is rather unimpressive as far as graphics and audio are concerned, but it is fine this way. It is a very playable and enjoyable game that lacks the depth of a full-fledged, serious dungeon crawler, but it more than makes up for that with its humor, variety, and light-hearted atmosphere. If you are a fan of Leisure Suit Larry and RPGs, I cannot recommend this game enough for you. So that's it for now. Please avoid waking up in trash heaps, and I'll see you next time!